We're going to record this. I think that I did it right. I hope I did it right.
Did great.
Is it doing the recording thing? Do we know? Yes, it looks like it is. Great. So the
It's
first part of the
great.
recording is going to be, is it recording? I don't know.
That's
So I think it's a sign of any good recording. So welcome everybody. I am Heather, the Executive Director of Portland Fruit Tree Project, and I am super excited to welcome everyone to our third one of these monthly chats. We've been highlighting different projects and different relationships. As we go along, I hope that you will ask any questions. Feel free to put them in the chat and we'll incorporate them into our conversation. We'll also have a dedicated Q&A at the end. We will ask everybody to stay on mute to reduce background noise. And then we're recording everything for anyone that wants to either watch it again or share it with friends or any of the above. So without further ado, we're super excited to be focusing on one of our super incredible fruit recipient agencies this year, St. Francis Dining Hall, which is a program of Catholic charities run by the incredible Darius Jones.
Can I sit? Yeah. Thank you. Here, you sit in the chair. Okay,
so this is a little intro to Darius. Prior to the pandemic, he was working at, working as a whole animal butcher at Urban Farm at the Nines Hotel. He owns an ongoing pop-up Wishbone Kitchen, Darius PDX Pop-Up, focusing on seasonally sourced ingredients inspired by his international travel and cooking. Darius has cooked all over the United States, including Clyde Common and Park Kitchen in Portland. He grew up on the shores of Lake Superior in Wisconsin and served aboard the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower as a nuclear steam plant operator and firefighter in the U.S. Navy. It is that service that inspires him to often say, "I took an oath at 18 years old to serve those who cannot defend or protect themselves, and I carry that spirit with me even though I no longer wear the uniform." So Darius, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know that your plate is very, very full. Oops, I was supposed to be moving these along. Sorry about that. So I really appreciate you being here with everything else that you've got going on.
Absolutely.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about the culinary program and how you came into this role?
Yes, thank you so much, Heather. I really appreciate, I really appreciate all the produce that has been coming my way. I appreciate your support and everyone part of your organization support. And I've been saying it for 5 months, and I'll continue to say it again, is I cannot do this job alone. I cannot do this mission alone, and I need all the support that I can get. So again, I thank you. Thank you for putting all this together so I can explain further what I'm doing. 5 months ago, the pandemic hits, and I find myself unemployed. Or 6 months ago, I suppose now, pandemic hits, I find myself unemployed, and I lay myself off from my own company. I get laid off from the Nines Hotel, and I just kind of start focusing on, you know, other administrative steps for my company and how to grow it, as well as seeing how I can support the community. I started applying. I applied for 6 jobs early on in the pandemic to stock shelves at a grocery store, and I was because all the trucks were backed up, and I was told I was overqualified. 6 different jobs told me I was overqualified 6 times, and I was reaching out to Red Cross. I was reaching out to Team Rubicon. I was like ready to go to like assist. I was signing up as a deployed frontliner that I'd be going deep into the heart of some of the pandemics around the country. And I just sat at home in Portland, waiting and waiting and waiting. I get a phone call from a chef of mine, and he's like, "This opportunity has your name written all over it. There's some money. There's a little bit of money attached to it. And are you interested?" And I was like, "Well, you got to tell me more than that." So he sent me this email that immediately put me into tears. And it was explaining 10,000 meals a week to the houseless community, kitchens that were run down, kitchens that didn't have any professional crews or professional staff, I should say. And I was like, I don't even know what this email means. I don't even know what any of this means. So I keep going down this path, this journey, and I meet Erica Palmer from Plate and Pitchfork. She gives me this full introduction. She does an interview with me, and then I get to Catholic Charities, and they give me a full extensive interview telling me what's going on in the county, in the city, regarding the houseless community specifically. And so I started doing my tour of all these different facilities, and that was approximately 5 months ago. I took the job as the emergency culinary director here in Portland, Oregon. And what that meant then and what that means now is that I was responsible for providing up to 10,000 meals per week. By my third week into this, we were pushing 15,000 meals per week, and that was through Blanche House at the time and St. Francis Dining Hall, and they were up and running. But the problem was there was kinks, there was breaks in the supply chain, as we all know. This evening, as we all know, the problem with the food supply chain is, and there was no job description. There was no job. None of this has ever been done before, specifically in Portland, and definitely not by Catholic Charities. And so I just hit the ground running, trying to figure out what it is I'm exactly doing and how to implement everything. And one of the first things that I came across was food waste, which was obviously, I was like, okay, here's a major issue in the food supply chain. And talk about a gut check. I grew up in the welfare line with, I had both of my parents when I was younger. My father worked 7 days a week, and my mother was sick when I was much younger, and we grew up in the welfare line for a very period of time. And I stood there holding my mother's hand with pride, getting that government cheese. And so food waste for my entire life, even if I'm doing small amounts here at home, it bothers me. It bothers me to my core. And here I am now. I have a responsibility to provide as many meals as I possibly can. And I was able to rescue $45,000 worth of food within a matter of 6 weeks. That was completely in the supply chain. It wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't food that was about to turn or anything like that. It was whole chickens, gallons of milk, fresh loaves of bread that were just baked that morning, hundreds of pounds of fresh berries. Cases of bananas. Some of those cases are still in my freezer for a banana syrup, or banana bread or some sort of banana cake that I'll be making here in the near future. Whole chickens, protein, all different types of proteins, ready to eat salads from all over different retailers. And so I just started plugging. I just started bringing this into play, reaching out, loading up my partner's Volvo wagon, loading it up where it's like the shocks and struts were like, okay, we're going to work today. That's how locked and loaded my car was. Calling up people on my phone, immediately was like basically hitting like a 911 for food rescue, and making sure that I was getting into meals within the next 36 to 48 hours. And I did that. That was like a full-time job for like 6 weeks, on top of making sure the resources had plain to go boxes, and made sure that, animal proteins was one of the biggest things that doesn't hit the nonprofit world. When meat comes into the nonprofit world, it's meat food. And yes, you heard that correctly. It's called meat food. And it is not for human consumption. Technically speaking, it is for human consumption. It is okay to eat. But it's what we ate when I was in the military. It's what prisoners eat in Multnomah County Jail, in prisons and county jails all over the country. And here we are. And when you break open a case of 50 pounds of ribs, it's 50 pounds of bones and gristle. And this was a reality. So it was a reality. It was a gut check, and I knew I had work to do. And so I had one of my chef mentor yesterday asked me, he's like, how do you build a menu? How do you figure this out from day to day? And so you start looking at the globe of all different things. You start looking at 100% utilization of fruits and vegetables. You take spoiled milk and you turn it into ricotta. You take, funky cream, you turn it into butter if you have the opportunity to. Um, you gotta let the funk go when it needs to go, and that does happen a lot. But you have to be able to think on the fly and adapt, and you gotta start looking. My culinary library is completely at work, every single day, and I'm constantly brainstorming of like, how do you take one thing and turn it into a meal for the masses. My goals are to take St. Francis Dining Hall, and I want to hit my first goal is to hit 6,000 meals. We've shifted the contract here in Portland to the east side solely because the west side, as many of you may know, has a lot of resources. That's where Blanchet House is, Central City Concern, Transition Projects, Union Gospel Mission, Portland Gospel Mission. And so we started transitioning our eyes onto the east side. The east side does not have a lot of resources to feed the houseless community. The shelters have some amazing kitchens in them with no chefs and no food. And that's another struggle of mine. You build this multi-million-dollar facility and you put a $500,000 kitchen in there, but you don't put a chef and you don't put any food. It's basically a wasteland. It's a storage room. So through what I've been doing for the past few months is how do we continue to make sure we're increasing the meals every single day to make sure that I'm increasing my donation allocations on a weekly basis coming in. And it's basically you start building a food hub and you start doing delivery and distribution. And Transition Projects have been one of my biggest partners in this, and they tell me how many meals they need and they come and pick them up, and if they can't pick them up, then I go ahead and deliver them. Some of the biggest things I've learned in the last 5 months is you have to adapt on the fly and you have to be flexible. And it's really simple for us to understand the definitions of those words and like, well, why wouldn't that be easy? And it's because that there's shelters that when they say they close the food line at 12 o'clock, if you're in line at 12:01, you don't get a meal. And if I were to not be flexible to Heather and the support network that she has in receiving donations, I would never receive a donation. And so many people in the nonprofit world dealing with food, like, well, this is my delivery time, Tuesday at 9 o'clock to 11 a.m. That's it. Well, that's not realistic. I don't even know how you work with anybody and build partnerships with anybody when you're doing that. So that was one of the biggest things. I was like, and people are like, when people started reaching out to me, they're like, can you receive a donation on this day? Can you receive it at this time? And I was like, yeah, not a problem. Let me know when and where, and I'll make sure I have a team there to meet you, or I'll meet you myself. Sorry, I feel like I'm just kind of taking over 100%. So if there's any questions or anything, or if I'm just babbling.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I am a member of the PFPT board, and I wanted to ask early on here is if you could talk a little bit more about the role of using fresh fruits and veggies and why that especially is important, and talk a little bit more about what else you're doing there in addition to the cooking. So tell me more about both things.
Absolutely. That's an amazing question, and thank you so much for asking it. That is another lesson I learned very early on in all of this is fresh fruits and vegetables. They don't really exist a whole lot in the nonprofit world. A lot of things come, if fruits and vegetables are coming in on a regular basis, they're coming in prepared, they're coming in canned, and that serves a great purpose and as a great emergency for when to get those vitamins and whatnot. But to be able to take in fresh produce and fresh berries, and whether you just make a parfait cup with your donated potatoes and frittata that you build, and you have these fresh berries, it changes everything to someone who's receiving a meal. Bottom line, somebody gives a shit. And they're trying to be able to make a meal that's not only palatable, but that's shown with love and care. And when you start serving fresh fruits and vegetables, and whether it's a stir fry or a casserole or a stew, the attitude, the energy shifts. It's people are starting to, they're hungry and they're looking for a meal, but they're starting to look forward to more and more of those meals, because you're not just throwing things in a pot and hoping for a meal from it. You're cooking, you're truly cooking, and you're putting that cooking towards a great cause. And when you make fish tacos and you have a fresh little salsa verde on top, the community gets excited about it, because it's something that they may have never had before, and it shows them that someone is putting thought and love into cooking, and not just putting slop on the plate. And that brings me into that follow-up question. And what else am I doing at the dining hall with Catholic Charities? I said earlier that I want to build a food hub and distribution center from the dining hall. And with that vision is I also want to set up a teaching program. I'm working on setting up a whole animal butchery program, a bakery program, and specializing and focusing on refugees and immigrants and several other communities that can really benefit from this learning environment. Because as many of you may know, or maybe not, that a lot of people are left behind in this pandemic. A lot of people are left behind looking for a job that could assist. Many people that have depended on a system that has barely ever helped them wants to give back and wants to learn something new, and hopefully we can give them a job skill going down the road. Baking a loaf of bread, breaking down a whole head of beef can give you a job skill in a grocery store, in a local bakery, in a restaurant, if we ever get back to reopening restaurants. But it gives them a purpose as well. And so that's one of the things I'm working on, and building partnerships with organizations such as yourself, with Feed the Mass, with Crisis Kitchen, with many others. We need to start coming together as one voice and stop working against one another, or trying to. There's so many resources that are trying to get the bite of the pie, and the pie is really small. And if we can work together and come together as a community and serve our community, then we can take more action, and we can get a higher return of support, with donations, with allocations coming in, as well as grants coming in and funding coming in to support all of this moving forward.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. One of the other questions that came in was also how someone without professional restaurant experience can help support the incredible work that you're doing.
That's also a great question. You just reach out, because I'm not sure how much Heather has been able to share with you, but I'm the volunteer coordinator. I am my program 100%, like with 100% transparency. I am the program. And what I mean by that is I'm the only, I don't have any money to give, but I have plenty of food and I got plenty of lessons to give as well. And I also have plenty to learn. I have a supportive administrative staff at Catholic Charities. But as far as in having a hired on crew or a paid crew, I don't. So I really have to depend on volunteers. And I would not be sitting here today if it wasn't for my volunteers. I can they everything I've thrown at them, every challenge I've ever thrown at them, they have been able to step in and step up. And it's getting involved. I always have things to clean and organize. I always have produce and donations coming in to be sorted. I always have meals to be passed out. And if somebody wants to take the time to learn a new dish in the kitchen, which I've had several candidates, several volunteers in my kitchen, that have just like, I want to make an apple cake and I've never made an apple cake before.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it together. Hey, can you make an aqua fresca? I've never made that before. Here's the recipe. Let's walk through it. And now that person's like, can make absolutely amazing aqua fresca. So there's definitely opportunities to grow and to learn. And as long as everyone's egos are checked at the door and people are coming in with an open mind and willing to communicate and ask questions and help out, I'll teach anybody and I'll work with anybody because I need all different types of support. So it's not just in the kitchen every single day. There's many avenues of how I need support, and I'm always open to free thought. I'm always open to creativity and ideas, and just building a collective of many ideas on how to proceed forward, because no one's done this before. No one's done this pandemic thing before since 1918. And so we're all figuring it out together, and the more that we can learn and grow together, the better it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Is the team dining hall email address that we have the best way to get a hold of you to reach out?
Wishbone Kitchen is actually the quicker response. Wishbonekitchen at Gmail. Team Dining Hall is my work email, and for example, I've been in the field for 3 straight days, and I haven't even been able to sit down at that desk. So Wishbone Kitchen is definitely by far the best way to reach out to me in that sense, and or texting or leaving a voicemail.
Great. And I'm just going to put that in the chat box, wishbonekitchen@gmail.com.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much. Fabulous.
Absolutely.
There we go. Awesome. There's some interest. People are ready. One more question here.
Yes.
Could you share your insight on why it's so difficult for nonprofits to get fruits and veggies, and if you accept fruit and veggie donations directly from community members or if only through a nonprofit? So 2-part question there for you.
The first part is, I think it comes down to, there's not, again, I'm the new kid on the block in this nonprofit world, and I'm doing everything against the grain. I wear a t-shirt a lot that says Rebel Alliance because I refuse to work inside the system. And so it's either going to get me fired or it's going to get me, just keep letting me do what I do. So I think part of that is flexibility, the supply chain, the knowledge of what to do with fresh fruits and vegetables. And that's shocking, but it is definitely real. And I think money is tied a lot to a lot of it, unfortunately. There are some big, large, organic, grocery stores that are owned by a tech company here in Portland, and they sure like to donate rotten produce. they're not willing to donate those perfect strawberries or bananas or whole chickens, but they are sure damn willing ready to donate it when it's rotten. And that is really the bullet point to answer that first part of the question. Because they don't want to pay the waste of it. They want me to pay the waste of it. They want someone else to pay the waste of it. And I think a big part of it is we've never had a supply like this of fruits and vegetables, starting with the cash crop, the crop stock of onions and potatoes in this country, and dairy, until schools have shut down, universities have shut down, restaurants have shut down. And so there's this backlog, there's this major break in the chain. And so now it's up to people like us to come together, to work with one another, and to basically start educating those that need to learn of how to use these products, and to put them out on a plate. And what was the second part of the question?
Do you accept donations directly from community members, or does it need to be through a nonprofit? And there's another question related to that, which is just generally, what's the best way to donate?
The best way to donate is to open a open communication with me, open a conversation with me, and we can figure out a schedule together, whether it's a one-time donation or it's a weekly donation. I receive donations from all over the community. If we were relying solely on nonprofits, I'm pretty sure I'd probably be out of a job right now, to be frankly honest with you, because there's been times where, for example, the Oregon Food Bank has been running out of food at times, especially in the fruits and vegetables, or the fruits and vegetables not even coming in. So you have to open up your relationship to the community, because we have to start engaging with one another, having conversations with one another, and how to help one another. And so that's what I'm constantly doing, is I want to build relationships with the community, and ask for help, but also to be able to provide that help and assistance as well.
That's great. Love that. We're getting all kinds of comments and questions in here. This is great. Wow. Oh, just a logistics question. Is a food handler's license required to volunteer?
If you're gonna work in the kitchen, it is. It's really easy. I really hate to admit how easy it is to get one of those. You can get them online. I think they're like $20. And it's some of the questions are super basic and very easy. And if anyone who's interested who doesn't have one, they can also reach out to me, and I can help guide them in the right direction. I'm building a new relationship with the health inspector. And so it definitely helps. It's not required immediately, but it definitely helps.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. And one of our viewers on another topic commented that one reason for the overflow is that these government subsidies are for commodity crops, where fruits and vegetable farmers are rarely receiving subsidies. And that's just, yeah.
That hits the nail on the head. Absolutely. I mean, the USDA food box program is a great example of that. Potatoes, onions, milk, pork, oranges, I think is the only one in there, because that's the commodity crop. So yeah, the whole box is based on commodity crop. It's not based to help the farmer of small town Oregon, small town Washington. It's made to help big farm, unfortunately. And yes, I admit I benefit off of it because it gives me a baseline of food to be able to help support the migrant farm workers that we're providing meals for, providing food for, refugees from all over the world, as well as immigrants as well. And so it provides a base, but there are definitely problems with that program as well because it's based on commodity program. The commodities, it's a huge problem.
Dara, if you don't mind me jumping in with another question.
Sure.
I'm so interested in the role of the consumer, even, you know, in all of these roles. I'm a daughter of a farmer, and I always had an appreciation for the, you know, the fruit and vegetables that aren't as beautiful. They're not table quality, as they say. And I'm really curious what your advice would be in terms of the role of sort of both citizens and consumers of food. Sort of how can we best support food justice initiatives and you know, promote food security? You know,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just so, let's just start with that, and then
I'm actually really excited to answer that question. So thank you for asking it. And I appreciate the questions because I have a million things running through my head right now with everything else going on, but a million things I want to talk about with this as well. So I'm working on this program called the Bayfield Market Project. Bayfield, named after Bayfield, Wisconsin, which is very close to where I grew up. Bay and field, also everything from the bay, everything from the field. That's fishermen, and that's farmers, and that's ranchers. And so to answer that question is to be able to have this program. It is to I want to raise money to be able to either receive surplus donations, which I'm doing from yourself, from Portland Fruit Tree and Food Waves, but also to buy produce and eventually, hopefully, proteins one day as well, very soon, and buy them in reverse. Buy them as the C's, B's, and A's, or the 3s, 2s, and 1s. A's or 1s being the best. B's being like, oh, I could eat this, or I could put this towards jam. And C being, there's definitely some funk on here, but I might be able to utilize it in something. So I think, and I want to do with that program is I want to support the local farmer, and I want to put money into the economy, because if the nonprofit world and the farmer can come together, we're going to be able to provide meals on a continued basis to the houseless community. So for consumers, you know, I think we definitely need to do our part, because unfortunately, we've been trained for a really long time, specifically since post-World War II, of what to look for in a grocery store. What those peaches should be, you know, what about those avocados, you know, are these, you know, those strawberries that you need in February. So I think to answer your question, in a sense, we have to protest. We have to protest against the big farm. Again, you know, eating, we don't, in my household, you can call me a food snob, we don't eat fresh tomatoes in February. We don't. We grow our own food, and we rely on that farmer's market. And the more that we can start as consumers supporting our local farmers with before we go to the farmer's market, and I'm guilty too, making sure that you have a meal plan for that week, and making sure we live in such a living in the Pacific Northwest, we are so lucky to live here, of the abundance of food that is grown, that is fished from our seas, that is raised on our land. We have so much abundance. But what we can do is not go to the grocery store and buy strawberries and tomatoes in February. You know, it doesn't matter what grocery store they're from. They're not food. They just really aren't. But what we can do is go to that farmer's market in February and figure out how to use the hardy greens, the root vegetables, and see what they have, and some of the fall and winter fruit that they have, and you supplement with the grocery store, but you have to buy smartly, and you have to be wise about it. What you're buying, and that way it's going to put more of the money that we have, and I know many of us right now have little money in the pocket. Is it's gonna that money when you go to Trevor Baird, who's part of my program, and I buy peaches from him, that money is going into the community. That money is going into his farm. I know him personally. That money is going towards a mortgage to his farm, a mortgage to his house. And I'm not saying that we abolish the grocery store, but we have to understand how to utilize the grocery store. They didn't do a very good job of teaching that to me when I was in home ec, but I learned it rather quickly over the years. And we just have to make better choices and how to support one another, and how to be able to communicate with grocery stores and taking some of that food waste and bringing it into the nonprofit world. And understanding what that food waste is. Now, granted, if I get a case of tomatoes in February as a donation from a grocery store, I'm going to use it. I'm going to make sauce with it is what I'm going to do. And I think that's those are the steps that we need to take, and we gotta figure it out together, because if we could figure it out together and support our local community first and foremost, we can also allocate enough money to go towards food stamps on a monthly basis to those in need. And I have been on food stamps many times over my life because I have worked full time and I've barely been able to keep a roof over my head. And so that's a program that is very near and dear to my heart as well. And that program is also broken. I think that answers your question. I hope.
Yeah, it does. I'm so interested in this. From through the lens of my mother's farm, it was always a frustration because certain foods are subsidized in our country, and two, because oil and gas is subsidized, that we're not actually paying the price of an orange or an avocado. She lives in Southern California, but an orange or avocado being shipped from Chile or being shipped from China, if they're the same price as the one going down the street, like we have a problem. But also they taste like garbage.
Yes, absolutely. That's why they're not.
Yeah, exactly. They're picked too soon so that they can survive an international weeks of travel in a refrigerated truck, and they finally get to the grocery store and they have a super low sugar content and they don't taste good, and it kind of like messes up the consumer's relationship with food. Yes. And if you've only eaten unripe but red strawberries, like, you think strawberries are not that great.
Right, exactly.
I hadn't had like a real fresh locally grown tomato until my early 20s when I lived abroad, and that was the only tomato that was available was one that my neighbor grew, and I was like, this is amazing.
Right. I feel I feel the same way about the banana as well. When I had the extremely fresh banana when I was in Vietnam, and I had no idea that's what a banana tasted like.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating, and it also like shows my own privilege that I've mostly lived places where I could get fresh food year round. And I feel like it's a really interesting thing to balance, of someone in the Pacific Northwest saying, hey, it's really easy to just eat fruit and vegetables that are fresh and grown locally all year round. And I'm just wondering what your advice is on that, and how we can support sort of the greater movement of reducing food waste in order to promote food justice, and also just like make food more delicious.
I think it does. I think it begins on supporting the figuring out a better model on how to support the local farmer. And I think but it's also a mindset also, because when you go to the local farmer, and I'm going to use Trevor Baird as an example, and you pay $5 a pound for peaches. And I've stood there in line many times, and I also work there part-time on Saturdays because I don't have enough things going on in my life right now. So I also sell peaches. People tell you that that's really expensive, and that's a lot of money. I can go to Safeway and I can get peaches for $2.99 a pound or $1.99 a pound. And I tell them, go ahead, but you're not going to get this peach anywhere else. You're not going to have the farmer standing right next to me and telling you why he grows that peach, or why he grows those cherries or those nectarines or those apples, and why he likes this variety over this variety. You don't get that at a grocery store. And so I think it's the education that we received in our society, specifically after World War II, because when you specifically after World War II, was to basically put women out of the workplace and put them back at home and make their lives convenient. So the man could go back to work, and then he came home after a long day and had a TV dinner. And what's a TV dinner? It's processed food, and had this canned food, all this easy, quick stuff. But yet prior to that, not only were the women of the backbone of this country during World War II, they were also freaking holding it all together. And we need to break that mentality and start not only just educating one another, but our neighbors and our communities, and also our politicians. And so I regretted that I never took the time to sit down and write a letter to President Barack Obama about freedom gardens. And that is something I plan to do in the first 100 days of this new White House, is to sit down and write, basically, I don't know, write an essay, write a question about victory gardens, freedom gardens, because we need that again more than ever in our country. And it's going to be able to, and I don't care if you're living on a 15th floor, and you know, maybe money's tight for you, but if you can maybe have donated or even get a little window box to grow fresh herbs, or even learn how to grow a tomato plant inside your home or apartment. We have to start coming together as a community, and we have to start pushing back heavily and hard, because we're being tested all around the world, and we're definitely being tested in this country. And I think we need to start taking the action of learning and educating to growing our own food, whether like it is just herbs in a pot in your bathroom or in your small apartment, or if it's those of us that are fortunate to have a yard, stop having a yard and manicured grass and start planting something. And I think that if we all did that today on this phone call, and then that spreads more and more and more, we can make a positive action, because that's the path that I'm on, and that is the journey in which that we all need to embark and get on board, because the more that we're able to support the local economy, the local community, and start growing our own food and understanding the importance of what food is, and why it's so important as far as in the pandemic. And on a side note, I recently learned a lot of politicians believe that food insecurity in this country has everything to do with the COVID. Just think on that for a minute. And I just recently found that out. And if that was the case, then I would love for them to explain to me why I'm 5 years old, standing in line with my mother, waiting to get government cheese and government milk and this and that and the other. But yeah, they relate a lot to the food insecurity, specifically to this pandemic. And they're right. We're in a pandemic, but we're in more than one just pandemic. We're in a pandemic of public safety, public health, as well as food insecurity. It's a disease, and if we don't start reacting to that, it's going to become worse, because it could be affecting us, or it already has affected us. As in us, I mean on this call. And what about the neighbor next door to you? You know, They might live in a nice house. They might live in the same apartment building that you do. Doesn't mean that they're not food insecure. And that's another thing that we need to start doing and getting back to is we need to start talking to neighbors again. Like when did that go away? You know, they're doing it all over the world. In other parts of the world, in Syria, I believe, is one of the countries. If you have a specific color of flag hanging outside your window, that means you're either safe, it means you are food insecure, or it means that you haven't eaten in days. And they've also started doing it in places like New York and Chicago. And we need to start taking time for ourselves as human beings and knocking on someone's door, or at least saying hi when you see that person pass down the street, because that's also going to help us in this in the protest against food insecurity. Because if we don't, then it just goes, then everything stays the same. Whether we're in a public health pandemic or not, it doesn't matter, because everything's the same. We have an opportunity to learn from our mistakes, to move forward, to keep pushing forward through all of this. But we got to come together and we got to start educating ourselves. And when it comes down to everything, it comes down to famine, comes down to war, comes down to drugs, it comes down to hate and bigotry. For me, it all comes down to food. You start there, you start building the strongest foundation that can't be rocked. And unfortunately, we have allowed our foundation to be rocked early on, and we have continued to be part of it. And I think now is the time that we need to rebuild that foundation and build it stronger than ever. I think that answers your question.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Darius.
We have about 10 minutes. We can go a bit longer than the original plan. So if there's any other new questions that anybody wants to ask, and I think there's one more that came in, and then we can turn it over to Heather and wrap things up. Another question that came in was on food preservation. What are some of the basic food preservation skills that you might recommend to people to help prevent food waste?
Pickling is one of them. I have, Lord knows, I have many recipes on that I'd be more than happy to share with anyone. Basic home butchery, like a whole chicken, instead of buying chicken thighs and chicken breast, buy a whole chicken and utilize that 100%. You make your stock. You can start, depending on how big your family is, you can stretch that in so many different meals. Taking funky fruit, for example, and turn it into to vinegar. And I have recipes for that and processes for that. And Lord knows I also have a million cookbooks I can recommend for that as well. You basically, you have to really open your mind and just start thinking outside the box. But those are some very, very basic ones. Curing is also something extremely, whether it's fruits or vegetables or protein. You can cure them, you can ferment them. Like I said, making vinegars, as well as meat. It's like, okay, I have a bunch of pork belly. What do I do with it? Well, you can, that's easy. And it might not necessarily be easy enough for the home cook or for the consumer, but there's no reason why it can't be, because we have so many resources, this amazing thing called the internet. And so we just have to have the confidence within ourselves. And I think that's what really comes down to, really, is before you start thinking about preservation, or you start thinking about cooking a different meal for yourself or your family, is you got to have that confidence, and you got to take those baby steps, and you just got to have faith. And if it doesn't work and it still goes to waste, the important thing is you tried. You made an effort, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this again, but I'm gonna do it differently. Or, hey, who's the guy with the crazy curls on the Zoom call? I'm gonna reach out to him and get a recipe. So, but yeah, vinegars, pickles, fermentation, basic home butchery, and curing of all those things are definitely the base where you can start. I have a fermentation corner in our household. My partner, she is so amazing. She's like, wait a minute, like, and I was like, wait a minute, you're gonna allow me to like have this awesome, amazing like fermentation corner in our house? And she's like, well, as long as I get to benefit from it, of course I am. And so I make I make a lot of my own vinegars in house. Cherry vinegar, peach vinegar. We make our own kombucha. We make our own miso, our own fire cider, things like that as well. And funky, but if you have a bunch of berries, you can make a bunch of smoothies, and you can also freeze. Proper dehydration, canning, and freezing is also huge on the preservation.
Wow, I love it. Such a great way to save the harvest.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah. And I guess I actually do have a few more questions for you.
I have nowhere to be, so it's
Perfect.
if you guys want to keep rolling, keep rolling. It's totally up to you guys. I want to be able to respect your boundaries, and your evening as well. So you guys can keep rolling. I'm just chilling at home and I'm comfortable. So yeah, please feel free.
Oh, fabulous. We're loving it. So I want to donate money. How can we do that?
Yeah, good question, actually. I'm actually trying to figure that out at the moment. I'm working specifically with Catholic Charities. I have taken small donations from my friends and family, and then I've given them a receipt, I've immediately told them how to donate, or what I'm also doing with the money. So there's two different ways. You can donate to me directly, and I will give you a tax receipt as well as a follow-up where that money went. And you could also donate to Catholic Charities as a gift to the St. Francis culinary program. And then attaching the culinary director, my name to it, that automatically authorizes any funds 100% to the culinary program. If it's received at Catholic Charities as a gift to the St. Francis Culinary Program, that automatically locks it in place for that program and only that program. But I am working on building a link as well.
Perfect. Wonderful. And then one more I want to make sure that we get to before I turn it over to Heather is if you can speak to any of the challenges you may have faced with the health department in procuring and receiving food outside the mainstream distribution system. Curious.
No, I mean, actually, as of right now, there really hasn't been. I've been in contact with the health inspector. She's been really excited that she was really excited that I had the kitchen professionally cleaned, rewired up to code. So that was a really great way to build our relationship from day one, and to basically give her my resume over the phone. So as of right now, I haven't really hit any of those, and I'm sure I'm going to, but I have not hit any of the, any of those obstacles at the moment, other than I would say just being mindful and communicating with all my resources and making sure that food is transported correctly, wisely. If meals are going to go out and be delivered, they're delivered immediately, things like that. And just making sure that things are of temperature, cooling temperature, and frozen down properly, things like that. But there hasn't really been I haven't had any issues thus far, knock on wood.
That's great. Thank you. And for those looking at the chat, we shared the link to get in touch, to volunteer one more time, and how to donate as well. And I think it's time to turn it over to Heather, our lovely ED, and take it from here.
All right. I can. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm a little bit of a talker. Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate your everyone's support. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Uh, yes, and then I am also looking. I'm having heavy volunteer exhaustion in the kitchen as well. Um, I'm moving into a new model at St. Francis. And I'm also losing, I've lost 10 volunteers just in the last week. So I am looking, you don't have, if you're a decent, a good home cook, please sign up to volunteer, reach out to me, and I'll teach you everything that you need to know to be able to cook a healthy, delicious meal to the houseless community. And I just want to reiterate real quick, actually, and take those words back, because I don't just prepare meals for the houseless community. We prepare meals for anyone who's standing in line. I don't care who it is. I don't ask any questions. If you're hungry and you need a meal, step right up. So I'm never going to look the other way. If I have meals to serve, I'm going to make sure that you get a meal. So it's not just the houseless community. It's the food insecure community. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's really a lot of us right now. So I just wanted to change that up. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darius.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you so much. This is fantastic. So appreciative.
Okay.
Until next time.
Till next time. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.